Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Books in the World, a presentation of the Cape Cod Writers Center. I'm Bob Silverberg, host on today's program, and I'm delighted to sit here with our author of the day, Barbara Struna. Barbara, welcome
Hello, Bob.
to our program.
Thank you, Bob.
Your book, the one that we're going to feature today, among some other things you've written and will be writing, is called The Old Cape Teapot. Well, the first question is, what has an old Cape teapot got to do with the story you've written?
Well, the old teapot came to life in my head while I was writing the first book, The Old Cape House. And so it kind of sparked me because I found on the beach a little piece of a pottery shard. And it's on the cover of the book, and it fascinated me. It was so pretty. And I said, what could I do with this? And I tried to research it, and didn't find out too many things about it except that it was from the Kangxi dynasty in China. And I said I could make a story of this. So that's what sparked me halfway through the first one.
All right, now we're only a minute into our half-hour visit here this afternoon, Barbara, but you found a broken piece of pottery.
Yes.
It turned out that it's from China.
Yes.
And from a definite period in China.
Right. Well, the pattern was the pattern. Now, a lot of times in America, it was copied. So I couldn't really tell if it was really original or it was a copy, because in colonial America, they copied those patterns.
All right. So you said to yourself, I'm going to find out why this was on the beach. Was it real? And if it was real, how did it get here?
Right. And I thought it could have come from either a plate or maybe a teapot. So that's when I just started to create this second story.
You've got a good imagination.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I love to tell stories, and I love history and mystery. So they all kind of work together.
All right, so going back to if it was from China, how did it get, is this?
Right, well, it broke and it was just thrown out, and people would throw their things just out in the water. They didn't have dumps like we have today. You would just discard them in the ocean. You know, go down to the end of the pier and just throw it out.
Throw it out.
Right, exactly. When you go to places like Marblehead in Massachusetts, and you go out there on low tide, you'll see amongst the rocks between the restaurants, the old restaurants and the piers, forks and knives and all kinds of things that are broken, pieces of pottery.
All sorts of residue.
Yes, right, because they would just dump it right over in the water. Right.
And there it is.
There it is, right.
All right, let's get back to this teapot here. So in your story, you've created an enormous backstory.
Yes.
Because reading your book, Barbara, you're jumping from a story of the 1700s, and the next chapter says present day.
Right.
So you're leaping 280 years at a clip.
Right. Well, I like to take my reader through history with the old chapters, and then I like to bring them up to speed in modern day, because we have so many things that we pass or go by today that were there in the 1700s. Whether they're buried in the sand, you could walk on the beach, and when there's a big storm that comes, all of a sudden in the spot that you walked on top of sand, there's the bottom of a shipwreck or something.
Yes.
And then a week later, it's all covered again.
It's all covered. Yeah, and periodically, right here on the Cape, there'll be a huge oak limb.
That's right.
Not from a tree, but from a hewn piece of shipboard.
Right. And I give a talk sometimes, and I have a PowerPoint of about 40 slides. And within those slides are pictures of what my husband and I have found and gone. As soon as something's in the paper that says, this was uncovered on this beach, we just beat it right out of there and go and see it. Because it's going to be gone the next time there's another big storm or so.
All right, now I'm going to start a new chapter in our conversation.
Okay.
A vocal chapter here, Barbara. Sam Bellamy, comma, pirate.
Right.
Sam made a mark for a very short time, but a very successful pirate venture time.
Right.
Back in the very early 1700s.
1715, right.
His connection to Cape Cod?
Well, he came here, legend has it, and even some historical documents have him coming to the Cape to find a crew to salvage off the coast of Florida, as we know it, or in the West Indies, a huge Spanish galleon flotilla sunk in a hurricane there off the coast of Florida.
And that's fact.
And he was going to, that's a fact, and he was going to go and salvage it. He got a crew. Palsgrave Williams from Rhode Island was a silversmith, and he wanted to go in on the venture, and they got a crew here on the Cape. And of course, while he's getting the crew, he met a girl, Maria Hallett. And then he sailed off and left her here.
He left Maria.
Yes, and he got there and it was all gone. So it already had been salvaged by Spain. And so he didn't want to come home empty-handed, and he went on account or became a pirate and started to learn how to be a pirate under, well, now I forget his name here. But that's what he did.
And he was a very successful pirate.
Yes, they had something, I think, in the New York Times.
line of work.
Yeah, right, that he would have been one of the richest people on earth today, given the wealth that he had accumulated. Right.
If I read history correctly about Sam, or what's been written about Sam Bellamy as a pirate, he was a very fair captain pirate.
He was, and that's why he rose in the ranks so quickly, because the men knew that he was fair. And they just liked him. They called him the prince.
Yeah, and he would distribute the loot among the crew.
Right. Now that was pretty normal, though, for any pirate ship. In pirate culture, everything was shared equally. So that was pretty common, except that I think Sam, they just liked him better. He was a nicer guy.
All right. Now, getting back to Cape Cod, and we'll get to your book.
Yeah, that's okay.
But we're taking a circuitous route here, Barbara. So he, and one of his, in fact, on his last venture, sea venture, he came back on his ship.
Right.
The Witta.
The Witta.
The Witta, Witta, and lost the ship in a storm right off of Wellfleet.
Right, off of Marconi Beach, right. And Barry Clifford is the one who discovered the pirate ship, and he always knew it was out there from listening to his father and his grandfather tell stories about this treasure that's hidden, buried off in the water. And so he did his homework, he researched, he never gave up. And finding the bell of the ship with the Witta across it, that was the key to know that this is really a pirate ship. And history recounts that the Witta originally was a slave ship, and then it was captured, and it became then the pirate ship under Sam Bellamy then.
And the ship was lost off of Wellfleet.
Right.
It went down. The crew, most of the crew was lost.
I think there were about 107 men. There was also a couple other ships in his group that were coming back to New England. And there were 102 men, I think, that died. Or I'm not sure. All right, my facts, I'd have to go and look. But there were eight men that were survived, they said. And they were taken to Boston. And 2 were acquitted because they felt they were coerced into being a pirate. One was John Julian and Thomas Davis. And those 2 people I talk about in the second book of the Teapot.
Right, so you've got Davis and
Julian.
who were actually, after the other survivors were hung after the court.
That's correct, right. They were all in the jail together and waiting for their trial and thought they were all going to be killed or hung.
All right, now we're down to 2 people.
Right.
We've made a very, very roundabout way to get here. But those 2 people are in your book, The
Right.
Old Cape Teapot.
Right, which is how it became in my head halfway writing. I knew the whole story of the first book. And so in between, about midway, I come across these 2 characters and I say, wow, they could really be a whole book on their own. And that's when it started. And then I found the little piece of pottery and that kind of just went off from there.
And Barbara's imagination put it all together. This little shard of broken pottery might have been part of the loot.
It could have been that I feel, or in the book, I felt that it was part of the treasure that sunk, and also it was also part of something that he gave to Maria Hallett. So Maria Hallett, I gave her a different story in the first book, and the teapot actually belongs to Maria Hallett.
Now, in your book, Barbara Struna, the book we're talking about today, finally we're getting around to it, The Old Cape Teapot, the fictional heroine of your book finds a broken shard.
Right.
That's sort of a coincidence.
Comes full circle, doesn't it? Yeah, it's on the back of the book with a little rock circle here.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm on the beach a lot looking for things. So yes, a little bit of me is in there, and I did find a piece of pottery, just like it says in the book. I took my little boy looking, just on the beach, and I found it.
All right, so getting back to the book, the Old Cape Teapot, Barbara, so the lady in the story finds the shard, but she finds a treasure.
She does. I didn't find any treasure.
Oh, more's the pity.
The treasure is in the story.
And what about treasure? What about people finding treasures? Do they belong to the people who find them?
Well, it's interesting. The first book has sold very well. It's been out over a year now, and the second book is coming up in its own. And I have a blog that I write about things on the Cape and relate it to history. And I get a lot of comments. I get a lot of reviews. And one of the reviews said they loved the book and everything, but they said, you can't find treasure anymore. So that was a silly part of the story. And I said, I thought about it and I thought about it. Wait a minute. I said, that's not right. So I did some research, and of course, people find treasure all the time. So I wrote a whole blog about all the different instances of treasure being found. The most recent that I can remember is the couple walking in California or somewhere on their property, and they walk past this spot for years under the tree, and all of a sudden they see these cans and there's silver dollars in them. And the dirt just exposes things after so many years, and sure enough, there was a treasure. So there's a lot of instances where you find treasure.
I would imagine when any treasure is found, the claims come sailing in from all directions.
Well, it is. It's interesting. If it is found on your property, it is yours.
Oh.
Right. Now, the ocean is a different story. You have to make claim to it. You have to file and make a claim that you believe something is there in the water and so on. And then it's not always allowed that the person that finds it keeps it. They would get maybe a percentage of it if it belongs, if they can prove it comes, belongs to a country.
I would imagine ship's company owners would say that ship was ours.
There was just one in England. A person was plowing his field, and he hired his friend to come in and do some more plowing, and they found a huge cache of things that dates back to Roman times. And so Britain took it all because it was they just claimed it, but they gave them a sizable reward of like $600,000, $700,000. Now it's in the museum right now. So in those cases, it's a little gray area as to who gets what, you know.
All right, let's get back to the book, The Old Cape Teapot.
Okay.
The lady in the story, Nancy Caldwell,
Right.
she's kind of adventurous on her own, and a little sort of over the top adventurous.
You think so? Yeah,
reading it, I wanted to say to Nancy, the story heroine, back off a little bit. You're exposing yourself to danger.
That's right. But you know, isn't that the classic movie? You're watching a movie and you say, "Don't open the door," and they open the door.
Yeah, I think
so.
of the teenage,
why not?
The teenage slasher movies.
Of course, you always say, "Don't go in that room," and people go right in the
Go
room.
in the room.
Of course. That's not a movie if it would stand back.
Yeah. Where's Phoebe? Oh, she went outside.
Yeah.
Outside. The murderer's outside. Why?
Right. Exactly. So that's what makes life interesting, though, isn't it? Opening up that door.
My goodness. So Nancy, the heroine of the story, actually exposes herself to danger.
Yeah, she's determined to figure this out, and feels she's right. And in a sense, she was right and correct. It's just that she took a few chances that she shouldn't have. But I kind of wanted her to do that, though.
And as you did.
I did, right. I wanted her to do that. And I don't think I would necessarily do that, maybe, but probably not so much.
Right. So in the story, the heroine puts herself in a dangerous spots by, well, first of all, letting the world know she found a treasure.
Right, right, exactly.
That might not be a smart thing to do if you find treasure.
Right. Well, you know, in the world today of the internet, I guess things spread so quickly that whatever you put out is going to be known by everybody within seconds or minutes.
And the entire world
right.
will know.
So sometimes I think, what the heck, why not?
In your storyline, you have nefarious characters figuring this is a good place to start getting rich on my own.
Right, right. I like my characters. I get them actually from when I travel. Bus stations, airports, just watching people walk down the road and in the street just on Cape Cod. And I look at them and I say, boy, that could be a story. That's a real character. And I'll write it down, you know.
So some innocent fellow walking past the bus station when our guest...
Well, there's a couple characters that I really did see at the Hyannis bus station. And I was sitting on the bus traveling to Alaska to see my son, and I'm sitting on the bus saying, oh, please don't get on the bus, please don't get on the bus, because he looked so scary to me. And he didn't. He went on further, but he's a character in the book.
In this book?
Yes, yes. I won't tell you who, though.
In your jump, in your story, as it came out in the final edition here, Barbara, the jump from 1700s to the present time, how does that work out to your storytelling? Well,
I like to give the reader a chance to either the Nancy Caldwell will discover something in present day, and then I'll either, the chapter before, I'll tell the reader in 1700 how that got there, that she finds it, or why she didn't find it, what happened to it. And you'll know that way, either in the 1700s and go back and forth that way. So it follows like a pattern.
And as Barbara, in the present day, your character, Nancy, searches out more and more and gets herself into closer and closer trouble with other people who are working their way for their own.
That's right. I decided to give her, she in the first book, Nancy Caldwell, sort of was the vehicle to move the story along. In the second book, I decided to give her more of more of an opportunity to become more involved in the story, but and I wanted to create characters that would bring some conflict to her.
And you did.
Yes, good, thank you. That's good.
For a moment, let's get back to those two survivors. John Julian and Thomas Davis. Those are two real people.
Yes, and I used the facts of whatever I could find about them, which are not very many. And then when there came a point in history that I couldn't find out what happened to them, that's when I took off into fiction. So there are several facts that about both of them, and then all of a sudden they just sort of drop off into history.
Oh, because they did survive the widow.
They traced them for a while.
They did survive the shipwreck. They did survive the trial, and they were the last two of pirate Captain Bellamy's crew.
Right.
What facts did survive?
Well, I found out that John Julian was an Indian, and some stories put him as a Nantucket Indian. Some stories put him as an Indian from the West Indies, which one I took. And then some say that he stayed in New England, and he became a slave of, I think, George Washington. And then he escaped and he killed somebody and he was hung. But again, it's all just
old
stories. Right, exactly. And Thomas Davis was originally a carpenter, and he was taken off of a ship, which is how he got onto the Whydah pirate ship, because they needed a carpenter. And so he was taken that way. And then he stayed in New England somewhere, but then he's lost also then.
Lost his family.
Right.
And Maria, who is not mentioned in your book, or just hardly
just
mentioned.
A little. I wanted to give her one last chapter to finish her life for the people who read the first story, the first book, The Old Cape House. And she, again, has never been proven to really exist in history.
Oh, really?
No, there's no evidence that she was actually connected to Sam Bellamy, except in legend.
Oh, it makes a lovely romantic story.
I thought so, but I decided to give her a better story in the first book and then finish it in the second book. Just one chapter is devoted to her.
Oh, because the history I've read of Pirate Sam Bellamy mentions their romantic life together.
There was a romantic interest here on the Cape. There's no other reason why. When he was finished pirating and he was sailing back from the West Indies with his ships filled, he was headed towards Rhode Island, up north, like Maine. I'm sorry, Maine.
Oh.
And why did he turn in a storm towards Cape Cod? And most legend says because of a woman. And so that's where the legend started.
And the romantic history, whether it's accurate or not, would say it was Maria.
That's right.
Oh,
that's
makes it a lovely story.
Yeah, I like my story. I gave her a good ending.
Yes, everything. Yes, you did.
I did.
What's ahead? I mean, you in comparatively short time, Barbara, you put out two very interesting stories.
Well, the third one I'm working on right now involves my contemporary character again, Nancy Caldwell. And
the heroine of the
yeah, right.
Teapot.
She's going to be a continuing character who will always find out myths and legends and mysteries and try to figure things out from the past. I'm always going to write in this alternating chapters. I like it. And she goes to, well, the story takes you to 1947 in Hollywood and Cape Cod. And so it solves another mystery.
Well, it takes Nancy.
Takes the reader to 1947.
Oh, but Nancy is contemporary.
Nancy's contemporary, right.
Oh,
and
I
so
see.
she will discover things that you're reading in 1947 characters. She's going to find out some things in modern day and get connected to it.
And she's going to get herself in trouble.
I think so.
Is she already in trouble so far?
No, not yet. No, not yet. Not yet. She's just arriving, in fact, in Hollywood to visit her son in California.
This is in chapter 2?
Well, maybe. About 10,000 words in.
Oh. Does writing come? Obviously it does. I'm answering my own question here, but I'll ask it anyway. Does writing come easily to you?
Well, you know, I have a lot of fun with it, and I love history. And I like to drive by on Route 6A and look at things that I know existed in 1700. And there they are. I can see it. I can touch it. And I guess I just have a real good imagination. I always told stories to my kids. And I made them up, usually. We'd find something. They actually would get tired after a while, and they say, "Mom, just read a book, would you please?" Because I'm always making them up in my head, including them in the stories.
It is interesting. You mentioned the houses on 6A. Yeah, and if you look at anyone and they've got a plaque on there that says,
That's right.
Originally 1684.
Yeah, and you
and
can't
you
imagine.
Say, wait a minute, that was, what,
How many years ago?
350 years ago?
That's correct.
Why is that house still here, and what has happened?
Right, and
in
who are the people that
meantime?
passed through those doorways and sat in those next to that window, and what were they thinking about? Probably the same things that we're thinking about now: children, family, love, but just differently a little bit.
Marvelous stuff.
It's fun.
All the notes I've had are between your fictional characters and the real pirates and all the rest. It almost makes you want to go out to the beach and start digging.
Well, believe me, if there was, it's a little hard now with all the snow.
A little bit.
But as soon as it clears, I'm out there, looking for whatever I can find, especially after a big storm.
Something
You're
will,
always going to find something.
something will wash up.
That's
and
right.
Although I'm holding the book backwards right now, something will wash up and come into about 240 pages
Right.
in
That's
a
right.
future book.
Right, exactly.
Marvelous stuff.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it.
Our book today is called The Old Cape Teapot. Our guest is Barbara Struna. And Barbara, you've made a wonderful story out of just a broken piece of pottery.
Yes. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I still have it. I should have brought it, but I didn't.
Oh, I would have loved.
Yeah, I still have it. It's about this big.
Is this?
That's it right there, yeah.
is this
Now my
a-
husband did the painting, of course, and did the cover.
We'll bring up the picture of the book cover, but put your face close to the set, the TV set, and see this little wiggle thing right there,
You'll see it. Yep, right there.
and attest to the fact that our guest today, Barbara Struna, has made a wonderful story, an easy, happy read of intrigue that makes you want to say, what is this heroine going to get into next from that little piece of pottery
Yeah.
that is in the fictional story but was in the true story of your own
That's right.
searching on the beach.
Right.
Barbara, thank you very much for
Oh, you're
coming in
welcome,
tonight.
Bob. I appreciate it. It was fun being here. Thank you.
And I appreciate your attendance too. Our author guest, Barbara Struna, who has written The Old Cape Teapot and the earlier story called The Old Cape House. We thank you for coming in
Thanks,
today,
Bob.
Barbara, and we thank you for looking in on today's episode of Books in the World, a presentation of the Cape Cod Writers Center. Thanks for viewing.